Welcome to Stephen King's Saturday. Okay, as promised, we're going to stick with this night shift collection malarkey for a couple weeks. So we are now moving on to Frank Darabont's The Woman in the Room. This is pretty insane that Frank Darabont, this was the first adaptation of Stephen King's work that he did. Obviously, he followed this up with the moderately successful Shawshank Redemption.
You might have heard of it.
Only the highest rated film on IMDb for like 20 freaking years now. Nothing seems to be able to dethrone it. And then he followed that up with The Green Mile. And finally ending it with The Mist. And that's kind of his Stephen King trilogy. But this is the forgotten piece to the Frank Darabont quadrilogy. That's right. What?
Quadrilogy.
Yeah, that's what it's called.
Oh.
Yeah, I even own the Alien quadrilogy. Actually, I don't own that thing anymore. I got rid of it. But that's what they used to call the 4 Alien films.
Oh.
It's a quadrilogy.
Okay.
Don't question me.
I wasn't.
All right. So, yeah, this is the first thing he ever directed for Stephen King. I think he did Buried Alive before this, which was a TV movie, which actually has a sequel. And I like both. I actually watched both of those movies back in the day. And I quite liked them. But this was his Dollar Baby movie alongside of the horrendously awful Boogeyman, which we covered last week. And we will be covering again the adaptation that's coming out here in June.
Yes.
And so let's jump into this. Now, we did read the short as we did with the Boogeyman. So we will be comparing. Much like the Boogeyman, there is a lot here that's the same.
Yes.
And a couple things that are a little different. Okay. In comparison to the Boogeyman, which was not good, how would you say this fared up against?
I think it's a pretty faithful adaptation.
How is it in comparison to the Boogeyman?
Sorry. This is better, I suppose, because it's more competent. I didn't like this story, though. I haven't liked really either of them too much so far. I mean, this one is just, like, sad. This is just sad.
Yeah.
It doesn't even really feel like horror to me. Like, I think it's real life horror.
Yes.
I guess is what we were calling it, but even then, it still is mostly just like a drama tragedy in a way.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, as like the writing, I don't know. Like Stephen King's writing is pretty much the same for me. Like I think he's pretty solid with his writing, but I don't know. I don't like either story very much, but I like the film or the adaptation of this, the short of it, more than I liked the Boogeyman.
Oh, yeah.
Because it is better shot and acted and everything.
Yeah. I thought this was leagues better than
Yes.
Boogeyman. I think Boogeyman is genuinely horrendous. And I like this. I like this okay. So, as far as the story of this goes, there's a guy whose mom is dying of cancer in the hospital. Now, as far as the story beats, pretty much beat for beat, everything is exactly the same as far as the novella version versus the adaptation version. Honestly, the only like major changes here is he is a lawyer in the adaptation, the TV movie thing here. He's a lawyer who is talking to one of his,
He's like clients, basically?
Yeah. He's a guy who's on death row.
Yeah.
And he's played by Brian Libby, who is in like every Frank Darabont movie. He's the guy who, I don't know. If you've never seen The Shawshank Redemption, I can't imagine you haven't. But so Andy Dufresne, he doesn't kill his wife, right? Like we find out obviously that somebody else did it, and this young kid comes in and says that he shared this cell with this guy who admitted to the crime, and that's who Brian Libby plays in that. In The Mist, he's the like kind of rednecky dude. Doesn't matter. Moving on. He likes to recycle actors, and Libby's one of those guys. So it's cool to see him here this early in the career, and he's stuck with him for the rest of his career. But yeah, he's in there, and we get a little exposition through him. And I actually prefer this edition. I actually think this is a smart way to handle this, because we don't have inner monologue that we have access to in film very much, other than like voiceovers and narration. And I like this exchange between him and the convict, because he's trying to get an idea of how much his consciousness will be affected by his decision to end his mother's life. By, this is her wishes.
Yeah.
Essentially, the whole story is his mother is dying. She is in agony. She wants him to euthanize her, and he's wrestling with the fear of remorse and guilt.
Yeah.
And so he talks to this convicted murderer who was in Vietnam and asks him, like, what was it like the first time, and what did you feel about it? Now, of course, there's a little breakdown in logic here, but because this is obviously like a sociopath, but how much access do we have to murderers that we can interact with in our life? Mm-hmm. Not many, I'm sure. I mean, he is a lawyer, but this is his one client who he's positive killed someone, and he has this moment to ask him, what's it feel like? Will I? And the guy's just like, he doesn't give a shit.
Yeah,
as I said,
care either way.
Consortium.
Right.
This is not the perfect person.
No.
But that's not what he cares about. He wants to hear that.
Yes.
So he's probably specifically asked this guy because he knows the kind of answer he's going to get, because he wants to feel better about what he ultimately ends up doing. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, I liked the inclusion of this scene. I think it makes sense, and it gives us more insight into his character and his thought process and everything. So I think it's valid. I mean, you would be asking yourself the same thing, like, if you were in that position, like, am I murdering or am I helping? And either way, what does it feel like to kill another human?
I mean, obviously there's a gigantic difference between murdering somebody who is innocent and is youthful, or even if they have 2 minutes left and you take their life without their permission, it's fucked up, right? Of course.
Sure.
But like, there's a massive difference between what this criminal is doing and what he's doing.
There is, but just that some people like have, it doesn't matter, right?
Of course, they have moral hang-ups.
Yeah, exactly. So he's exploring that.
I push the question over to you. A loved one, your mother, since we're specifically talking about mothers here. Now, this question won't work as well with me. I'll go with my father.
Well,
but if your mother's dying in the hospital, and she's like, these guys won't kill me, I'm in fucking agony, I'm dying slowly and miserably, I do not enjoy my life at all anymore, Kaylee, you're the only person I can turn to, kill me. What do you do?
I mean, I would want to help her out. Like, if it's her choice, and there's no, like, hope for recovery.
But there are people out there who think very opposite of that. Like, no. Which is fucked up, because
it's just, I mean,
it seems vindictive.
Right.
Like, no, you have to sit there in misery.
Yeah. I mean, the question is also, like, complicated because, like, people who are suicidal, for example, like, they're in misery. They're in pain. Like, they want to end it all. But I wouldn't want a suicidal person. Like, I would want them to get, like, help in some way, whether it's mental help or chemical help or whatever, because I, want people to live their life as long as possible.
So of course the difference there, of course, being that someone who is suicidal isn't terminal.
Right, but that's, exactly. So like if you're a terminal cancer patient or a terminal any illness patient, and like I said, there's no like real hope for recovery.
Yep.
And you're content with the life that you've led, and you don't want to be in pain and like just wasting away your days.
Yep.
And you're very explicit about that and coherent too, because that's the other thing. Like, I wouldn't do it if she was like, not fully there and able to answer questions. But that would be difficult too, because it's like, is it because of the pain, and like, you know, that almost makes you want to do it more. But I mean, yeah, like if she was 100%, like that's her decision, and all those other things were true as well, then I wouldn't feel like I was murdering her. I would just feel like I was helping her, you know,
easing her suffering.
Sure. But I do think it would still, like, I don't know. I mean, I would think that I would be kind of bothered by it, of course, because, like, just losing a parent, or a loved one, and also, like, knowing that you helped them die. But maybe not. I don't know. Maybe it wouldn't bother me.
I feel like you're doing them a great service.
Yeah.
So I would probably be more narcissistic about it and be like, I helped them, right? I'd be like, good for you, Jason, right? Or so I assume.
Yeah.
We never know how that's going to be until we do it, but my personal belief is I would be mostly fine with it. My biggest, upset and gripe there would be that my father is dead.
Right.
Like that's of course, but watching him in misery. Now, there is, of course, another factor at play here, and this is the factor of some sort of dementia and not really being competent enough to make those kinds of decisions. But when somebody is terminal like this, of course, the question is different when it's like, oh, they got a 20% chance of making it through this if they can just stick it out. Then it's like, and they're still like, listen, I don't want that 20%. Like, I don't want to be in agony. I don't want to sit here. Then it would be tougher. Yeah. That would be tough. If it's like, dude, she's dying this month, guaranteed, her organs are shutting down, the cancer's overgrowing, whatever, she's going to be in agony. All we can do now, and they always say this in the movies, right? All we can do now is, manage her symptoms or whatever. And it's, at that point to me, if the person is like, I don't want to just spend the rest of my days in agony, because you can't enjoy anything.
Right.
You're not really giving anything to anybody else. Everybody's going to remember you.
Everyone's watching you as like, wasting away and in pain and everything.
It's a terrible way to live. No one wants to be like that.
No.
So for me, I'm very pro-Kevorkian. Pro-Vorkian.
It's just, it is a very, difficult situation for sure.
Of course,
because there's so many factors to it, and the vetting process for something like that, like for assisted suicides, like
this is why you need loved ones that you can rely on.
Yeah, but not everybody has those.
No, they don't.
So.
But that's why I'm saying you need to have them.
Yeah.
You need to have those people that will do it for you, right?
Sure.
Everybody needs that person who you show up with a shovel and you say no questions.
It's definitely interesting that we, with animals, when your dog is a certain age, or there's something people put their animals down so often, which I've always been it's weird because, I'm pretty, I don't know, I've never liked that idea at all. I've never liked, because, obviously with your pets, they can't talk to you and tell you, what they want or how much pain they're in. You can only observe and, kind of make decisions based on that. But yeah, people do that with their animals, but we don't do that with people. When, in the same scenario where it's there's nothing to be done, they're just in agony.
Because people and animals are different to people, right?
Yeah,
and with a lot of people, that's not the case, right? You don't see a huge difference.
No.
You're an animal lover first. In fact, you probably like animals more than you like humans. So for that, there's a different case to be made there. But with a lot of humans, especially with the court system, obviously, being the main factor here, humans are seen much differently than animals. And thus, you can go to prison for helping out grandma from her agony.
There's also, because, with insurance, life insurance, right? You don't get... I don't know anything about life insurance, but it's always the thing in movies and books, if you kill yourself, your family doesn't get any of your life insurance benefits. I don't know if that's a true thing.
It depends. There can be clauses like that, but suicide is part of it, depending.
There could be something that could be contested.
But yeah, I mean, I don't really honestly know how that works. I'm not going to speak too much on it because, like, somebody could take out a life insurance policy, like, one day and then kill themselves the next. So there's got to be some kind of, like, a time limit or something on that, for all I know. But regardless, yeah, moving on from this conversation, I mean, this is really just kind of a philosophical debate over morality and, what is right and wrong. And that's always going to come down to the individual, right? There's going to be people who are watching this are like, no way, that's murder, right? Although we have a primarily like horror audience, so I have a feeling this is going to be much more leaning towards, oh hell no, we should definitely help them and kill them, right? As opposed to like if we were covering fucking Lifetime movies on this channel, I think we'd have an audience that leaned a little bit more in the opposite direction. So, but what do you guys think? Leave in your comments below. I know this is a fucked up topic and maybe not something you want to address, and you don't have to, but if you do want to talk about it, do you kill mom or do you not? That's the question. Put it as bluntly as humanly possible under all the parameters in which we spoke. So anyways, moving on from that. Yeah, I like that. Now, in this story, there's like zero horror elements. Kaylee said that there's some mention of a figure or person or something under the mom's bed that she has seen. It's a very quick throwaway line, but it adds some kind of like mystery air to it. But I think, of course, it's probably just her dementia, or even if it's not dementia, it's the drugs.
Yeah.
I don't even think she has dementia. She just is coming in and out because she's like 2 seconds after she's like talking to him, she kind of goes, oh, when did you get here? How long you been here? And you're like,
she's so messed up, where she's not fully conscious.
And that's where I would just be like, Mom, it's over.
Sucks. Yeah, there's no horror elements. Like none of the kind of horror elements that I would want, and that's why I said that this is more of like a drama, if anything.
Sure. So is the Shawshank Redemption. So that's why he took that.
There's a small scene that is kind of like a horror part where he has a dream and he's in the hospital and a bagged figure comes out in a wheelchair and he like goes over to it and unzips it and it's his mom and she's like dead, but he's like happy that it's her and he hugs her and then the camera pulls back and it's this creepy looking actual corpse that they found. And that's it. That's all. And then he wakes up from it. So
it's kind of like his guilt to a degree, right?
Well, he's like afraid of the death, but then it's like his mom, and he's like comforted that it's her.
But then he sees that she's like a corpse, like rotting in the ground, and that's where he's like, jarred, because it's jarring to him because like I don't think jarred is a word. Is jarred a word? It's jarring.
No, he's jarred.
He's jarred. I don't think that works. Yeah. But it's jarring. I feel like jarred should work if jarring is the other word, right?
I think
I was jarred. It's jarring.
I don't know. I think it works.
Is that a proper word? I don't know. Anyway, but yeah, I just think that him. Of course, I think it's just thrown in here to have any kind of horror. But to me, there's a peacefulness to her slumber, right? Like when he sees her dead, she looks at peace.
Yeah,
so he gives her a hug, but then the realization of true death is shown to him, right? Of like she's gonna rot in the ground, like you did this to her. And so when he sees that face, it's a reminder of like death isn't peaceful when shown in this context.
Yeah.
Right? That's how I saw that scene.
It's so weird because it's like, we have, obviously, we can't help it, but like, you have such an attachment to like the person's body. And, when
that's their vessel.
When they're dead and the body is left and whatever happens to the rest, whatever you think. But it's like, it decomposes like anything. And
not if you freeze it.
Not if you freeze it, but for the most part, it's gonna rot and decompose, and it's body horror, right? Like to think about your own body doing that, and this is why a lot of people want to be cremated too. Like they don't want to think about their body decomposing or whatever.
Sure. I hate the thought.
Yeah, but it's like, it is weird because it's like you are also super attached to your own body. So it's like, yeah.
Yeah, sure. I spend my whole life taking care of this thing that's eventually going to rot and eventually decay into nothing and turn to dust.
We're just so temporary.
We are so temporary, and I love my body.
Yeah.
Right? And I love being here, and the thought of it, and that's the horror of this episode to me, is that, life is finite, and the clock runs out eventually on all of us, and the lucky ones get to it depends on your version of lucky, but to me the lucky ones get to die like this, but in its own right, this is a tragic end to the story. And as Kaylee was saying, and as we all say, like pretty much everyone's ideal death is old, warm, dead in your bed while sleeping, right? Sleep. Like that's everybody's go-to, right? 99% of people, and for a reason, because it's the most peaceful, and you don't even know it happened, and you're not scared, and you lived a long life, and I mean, there's so many obvious reasons.
So many.
So sitting in a hospital and just knowing you're dying, there's nothing you can do about it. You're in agony, and there's no end in sight outside of death. It's horrible. It's horrible, absolutely. But at least you got to that point, although she's only 60 in this.
She's really young.
So it sucks. It's
not like she
should have like another 30 years, but I mean, she's smoking in the hospital, so don't smoke.
Yeah, it's weird that like we don't remember our births. But you can be conscious for your death, like aware of your dying. Sure. It's such a bizarre, like, why, I don't know. But
it's not even birth, it's your conception.
Right. Like,
that's
but you're
the
not,
moment.
You're not even, like, aware. I mean, at least, like, the awareness that we have now is not aware. Like, you don't remember being born or being conceived. Like, you don't have a memory of that at all. And you won't technically have a memory of your death, but you could be like very aware, like, oh, okay, I'm dying like right now. Like this is the death process. And there was something in the short story that I thought was interesting too, because obviously since this is his mother, he was thinking about like his birth and everything. And I guess he was like the only child that she gave birth to. His brother was adopted, and there was some line about how like the cancer started in her womb and spread to her stomach, and elsewhere. And so he was like kind of comparing it to himself, like I was also born in from her womb. Like shouldn't I just kill her faster than this thing is doing? Like do the mercy of letting her go quickly and.
Both the things she grew in her womb are killing her.
Yeah, exactly.
One is slower than the other.
Right. And one is doing it out of love.
One is having mercy on her, and the other one is being extremely malicious.
Yeah.
And just to throw this out there, to clear this up, I don't think a baby has consciousness at conception. I just wanted to throw that out there because I said that, and then I didn't want to make it seem like I'm some like hardcore pro-lifer. I'm not. I'm pro-choice, and I don't know at what time a baby is aware and conscious and all that, but it's sure as fuck not a conception.
Yeah, I was mostly, to be honest, thinking of the scene from Beau is Afraid. It's like literally the opening shot of him being born, and just thinking that it's weird that we don't have any. I mean, it's probably for the better though, because I'm sure that is insanely traumatic to be born into the world.
Yeah,
but
I have no idea what's going on.
Maybe it won't be as traumatic to leave it. So. And
you weren't asked to be born.
No.
Right? Nobody asked your permission, but you were lucky to be born, even if you don't think so.
Very, very lucky.
So ultimately, in comparison to the Boogeyman, it's far better. And I think that we just had a really cool discussion over some very heavy themes, and that was brought Jesus Christ, can I speak? Brought to be by this film, right? So that did a hell of a lot more than the like 10-minute conversation we had about the hairlines.
Oh my god!
In Boogeyman. That's what we discussed the most in the Boogeyman review.
Fixated by, we're like, why don't you just shave your back bangs,
Oh
man?
my god, dude, that guy's hair still keeps me up at night. But yeah, this one obviously it begs much deeper philosophical questions of life and death and morality, and the performances are all fine and good and adequate for this. I think that the Arthur Billings in the other episode was just dreadful all around. Hated everyone and everything in it. The production value, everything felt stagnant, stale, and just terrible. And this one felt like a promising short from an obviously talented director that went on to incredible feature films. So, yeah, is it some phenomenal short that's like a must-see? No, but I can see what drew Frank Darabont to this particular material because of the themes that he likes to explore in films like The Shawshank Redemption, of course, bringing this prisoner character in. This guy plays a prisoner in both of those films. And I don't know, just the exploration of, the human condition. I think that's always a great thing to explore. What it means to be human, what lengths we have to be pushed to do things that, go against who we are and what we might ultimately believe in. And, he does these things really well, whether it's in the aforementioned Stephen King adaptations or other films like The Majestic with Jim Carrey, or even the work he did on The Walking Dead, which Frank Darabont is responsible for bringing The Walking Dead to television. So, anyway, that's that. It's a faithful adaptation that I actually think I prefer the adaptation over the book. I think that the inclusion of his talk with the prisoner elevated this one for me into a more clear-cut morality tale, as opposed to the book, which made me read between the lines a little more. So maybe I just had to work for it more, and I'm too stupid. So I like the spoon-fed version more. I don't know, but I don't know. That conversation between him and the prisoner just really had me thinking about that and having to go to somebody and talk to them about that because of what you're thinking of doing and trying to compare and contrast. I think that's really cool. And I dug this one. I don't really recommend it per se.
No,
but,
as I liked the conversation we had.
Yeah, it's like a buried Stephen King adaptation that no one ever talks about. I'm glad we're covering them on the channel.
Yes, me too.
Now there are two more, but one of them is an adaptation of Children of the Corn, so we'll definitely do that, and I definitely want to read that once and for all. So Kaylee and I will read that for next week. But then the next one, so that one's called Disciple of the Crow, which is based on the Children of the Corn and is the official first Children of the Corn adaptation. I think it's before the Linda Hamilton movie. Almost positive, but I'm pretty sure, because it was like 82, 83, somewhere in that area, and I think Children of the Corn is like 84, so I think it's like predates it by like a year or two maybe. I'll look at the timelines to make sure, or if you guys want to tell me in the comments below what the year difference is. That would be cool. But then there's another one in this Stephen King A Night Shift collection called The Night Waiter that has nothing to do with any Stephen King work, and it's a completely original thing. I don't know how I feel about covering that, because it's like, it's not Stephen King Saturday, but I guess it's just as connected as Return to Salem's Lot, or sometimes they come back for more, or The Mangler Reborn, or any of these random spin-off Stephen King fucking farces that they throw out there to sell shit. So I figure if we're on this, we might as well cover all four of them. But there will be no adaptation to compare and contrast.
All right.
So that's that.
That's that.
So look forward to the Disciples of the Crow next week. And until then, guys, would you kill your mom or not? That's the real question
That's the
here.
question.
And let us know.
Let us know.
All right.